All right, I've got 2 o'clock, so I will go ahead and get us started. All right, hello everyone, welcome. Today we're going to talk all about family photos, highlighting, locating them, identifying who's in them, and then how to date them. For those who don't know me, I'm Katie Stilp. I'm the local history librarian here at the library. This is, I can't even remember what number session this is, but we've been doing this Genealogy Jumpstart series since last year. So if you happen to have missed any of our previous ones, on the handout, there's the link for our website where you could go watch some of the past recordings and get some of those past handouts as well. And then probably next year we'll restart the series again. To dive in, I want to highlight why photos are important because, of course, when you're thinking of genealogy, you might not always be thinking of photos. You're thinking of all the different records that you're trying to find. But of course, photos put a face to the name of the people that you are researching in your family tree. And I always think it's so cool to see kind of the similarities in the way you look compared to how your ancestor look. You know, you look at a photo and then you see, oh, that's where I got my nose from, or my unique smile, or my eye color. That's where it came from. Of course, I'm sure I have, like many of you have inherited or will inherit family photos from other family members, and you're kind of entrusted to preserve those photos for the upcoming generations. Or maybe you just want to preserve your own personal photos that you've taken throughout your lifetime. Of course, in order to make sure that you're doing that and making sure that the things are available for the future generations, you want to do your best to label them and preserve them in an appropriate way so that they're not damaged because, there's so many ways that they can get damaged. And of course, what good are photos if you can't identify them or what branch of the family they're from? So that's why we're going to highlight some of these things today. Of course, you might also want to share photos with other people in the family. You might have the only copy of a photo of your third great grandparents. So, of course, you want to share that photo with others in your family. So, scanning them in, sending digital copies is a really easy and cheap way to do that. It's also a really great backup to have a digital copy in case that original photo gets damaged, gets lost, get destroyed, because there's so many different physical and biological ways that a photo can be damaged, like scratches from it, or fingerprints, or pests, or mold, or, something, fire or flooding. Things happen, unfortunately. And of course, you want to make sure your photos are going to be organized in some way so you can quickly locate those ones that you're looking for. We're talk all about organization. I think it's September maybe. But really the highlight is you want to make sure that organization system allows you to find that right thing that you're looking for in seconds or minutes, not in hours. So we'll dive a lot deeper into organization a little later as well. So first, we're talk about how to locate photos, because if you don't have some of those that you've inherited or you're looking for more photos, I'll give you some tips and tricks on that first. So, of course, the most obvious place to look, your own house. So, what have you inherited from those other family members? What photos have you taken that you might have? After that, of course, you want to check with your close living relatives. So, who inherited your parents' photos, your grandparents' photos? Reaching out to those siblings, those aunts, those uncles, those cousins. Ask everybody because some might have inherited certain photos, others might have inherited other ones. Some of them, there might have multiple copies around the family. Some of them, there's only one person who has that one copy of that photo. So, you want to be sure to kind of cast your net far and wide. Another little tip is if you're tasked with cleaning out somebody's house, photos and other family documents sometimes are hidden. Sometimes they're tucked away in books or in envelopes that are just random or behind other photos in a frame that you didn't realize until you took that photo out of the frame that there's two other photos hidden back there. Or maybe you found them in a drawer or, just tucked anywhere. So look anywhere and everywhere. Even if you think, oh, there's no way there's a photo or something important in here, just do a double check just in case, because you never know the crazy places that you can find photos. Of course, once you've done that, you want to look wider into the family then by locating those distant cousins who might also be researching the family tree. So, of course, start with asking your close living family yet if they have any contact with any distant cousins and see if they can connect you. Or you can also locate them through some of the genealogy websites that we've talked about and will continue to talk about. Of course, you want to try to reach out to the oldest living generation first because they're likely the ones who have those materials and who probably have some really great memories that they can share about those photos and who's in those photos. So you can use some of those genealogy sites. You can use Facebook, White Pages, and there's also a database called A to Z database that I'll show you that you can use to locate their address or a phone number if you just have a name of somebody, your cousin Carol who you lost contact with or who's really distantly related and you've never had a chance to chat with her. Maybe you need that address or that phone number of hers. So there's a couple different ways that you can do that. Or like I said, through the genealogy sites, there's a option to message the people who have family trees on there or have put documents on there through the website as well. When you're trying to locate those living relatives, it's always helpful if you have a name and a last known city of where they were living. So checking obituaries, the more recent the better, because usually in those obituaries it lists who's surviving that person, and usually it lists a city or at least the name of that person, or possibly if it's local, they're list out the cities. There's also public records databases that Ancestry.com has that you can sometimes find a more recent address for that person. And sometimes you just can't find that person, so always check under their spouse's name as well if you happen to have that information. Unfortunately, even calling them or sending them a letter, sometimes you might not always get a response or get a response right away. Maybe they're worried that you're a scammer because, there are people out there, unfortunately, who try to scam personal information out of people. Or maybe they just don't have anything that they can share, but definitely at least try. Be patient, follow up with them. If you've sent them a letter and didn't get a response, maybe send another letter in a month or two. Maybe it was just a really busy time for them and that it got, put down in the bottom of the stack and they forgot about it. And then you send another letter and they were reminded, oh yeah, I forgot I hadn't reached out to that person, or give them a call. And they can always really connect you with other people. So maybe they don't have anything that they've inherited to share with you, but maybe their sister or their brother who they have contact with could have things to share with you as well. So I'll show you how to look up somebody on White Pages if you happen to have their name or hopefully their name in a city and state. So I'm just going to pick a random quarterback, Aaron Rodgers. Not going to put in a city or state. There's lots of Aaron Rodgers in the world. So you just click search. If you do happen to know that city and that state, you would put that in that field. So at first, White Pages wants to get you to pay for their premium subscription. So if you ever see this view full report, just ignore that one. Scroll down until you get one that says view details. That's one that you want to click on that you don't have to pay for. So now I get an address for this person. Sometimes they do list landlines. Unfortunately, we just don't know how accurate this information is. It could be years old. Not a lot of people have landlines anymore, so it might not still be their phone number, but usually these addresses are fairly accurate. So that's a way to be able to find them. Sometimes if you scroll down too, you get other people that are living in the household as well. Yeah, so like here's a relative. So this might be a mother or a wife or a sister or brother. So you can kind of pinpoint, oh, do I have the right person based on who else might be listed down here in the relatives. So that's just whitepages.com, completely free for anybody. Just make sure you don't click on that view full report one, otherwise they're going to try to charge you. And then this database we have exclusively through the library. You do need your library card number if you're going to use it outside of the library, but you are welcome to use it outside the library. So to get there, you go to apl.org. Under Research and Learn, if you hover over that, there's a spot where you can click All Online Resources. And then these are just alphabetically listed. So you're going to scroll down until you find this last one here that says A to Z databases. So at that point, it would ask you for your library card number if you're accessing it from home. But of course, this site recognizes I'm in the library, so it's not going to ask for me for my card number. So right here, I can find a person. So again, I can put in that name of that person and I can put in a location. So maybe I want to find one that's in Wisconsin. And I can just do it by the state, or I can do it by a specific city and state. There's also this little button up here. So it says both executives and residents or just residents. So it's also looking for people who are like owning companies. So if you know this person probably doesn't own a company or you don't want their business address, you can toggle onto this button that says residents only if you're just looking for a regular person.
Did you say that if I'm at home and I want to use this feature, I just have to have the Appleton library card?
Just your library card number. Yep.
Or I could come in here and use one of the computers?
Absolutely. Yep. So right here, it just kind of gives you an overview of the results it gave me and the addresses. And if there's a phone number listed, again, we don't know the accuracy of the phone numbers or how old this data is. But it's worth a shot. And usually the addresses are fairly accurate for finding those people. You can also click on them to get a little bit more information. So sometimes it tells you, okay, this is how long approximately they've lived there, what their age is. So if it's somebody with a common name like this, and you're like, oh, the person I'm looking for is in their 70s, well, this probably isn't the right person then. If you can see their age is 38, or they've only lived here for 69 years, well, I think this person that I'm looking for has lived in that same house for 20 or 30 years. So you get a little bit of data here as well to help you narrow down who it is if you're looking for the right person. Of course, a lot of people are on Facebook nowadays, so it's also fairly easy to find people on Facebook if you're a Facebook user, or again, some of the genealogy websites as well. And when we use Family Search later, I'll show you how you can go and message somebody. Of course, finding those existing photos within the family is probably your best bet for locating family photos. Hopefully, they'll all be labeled with who's in the photo. Hopefully, that label's correct. But of course, we just don't know. We don't know who's identifying that photo. It could be somebody who knew the person or somebody who was just guessing. And we don't know, did they label it right after the photo was taken, or was it 10, 20, 30, 40 years later? Okay. Also be aware you might need to go to people to get copies. So if you reach out and find that cousin Carol who lives in Illinois, well, maybe you're going to have to go visit Carol in Illinois to go get a copy because maybe she just doesn't have those technology skills to be able to get you a copy of that photo or send you a digital copy. Or I've had, people reach out to me and are say, hey, can you give me a copy of the photos that you have? And they take their cell phones and they take just a little, oh yeah, here, and then they take a photo of it and send it that way. Well, it's not the best quality photo. If you really want this, unique, wonderful family photo, you want like an actual really good scan, a really good copy of it. So if you want to go get that, you're going to have to maybe do a little driving or see if you can find somebody, maybe they have a young child or grandchild who can help them make a copy maybe, but, you can't always rely on them. You could be waiting a while if you ask for the photos and maybe you never get them. I reached out to somebody probably 15 years ago now, and they said, "Oh yes, I have a copy of this couple that you're looking for," and I still to this day have not received the copy. So, you can try and try and try again, but unfortunately, if you just don't get a response or they say, yep, I'm going to send it, yep, I'm going to send it, and they still don't, there's only so much you can do short of going to their house and knocking on their door. Of course, another easy way is finding them online. So a lot of us genealogists also put photos of our family online to help put that face with that name and put them in our family trees. So some of those websites where you can find those are going to be Ancestry.com, Family Search, and MyHeritage, and I'll show you in just a second how to find those. But Ancestry, you can search all the family trees for free on our library edition. The bummer with the library edition is you can't contact people through the library edition. You do need that paid subscription in order to contact somebody. And of course, the library edition you do have to use within the library, but you could find that family photo that you're looking for and all that great stuff that people have on their trees. Family Search, it's always completely free, even outside of the library, free to use and free to contact people. And again, I'll show you a demonstration of that in just a second. And you can look in, each person kind of has a tree in the or a page in the family tree, and that's where you're going to find those photos if they're uploaded. MyHeritage is also one that you're going to need a paid subscription in order to access all the trees and the photos, but you can at least do a search for your ancestor's name and see that a photo or a tree exists before you decide, hey, I'm going to pony up that money and subscribe to it. And again, I'll show you a short little demonstration in just a minute. Unfortunately, the bummer with finding these online ones, sometimes people crop the photos. So if it's a photo of the whole family, they crop it down so it's just that one person, or it's just a really low quality photo of it because, they can only upload such a certain size of a photo in these websites. So it's always great to find those photos, but you can maybe perhaps reach out to them, ask them for the original, or if they have, a higher resolution scan that they could do for you and send you that copy. Or maybe they have more photos, like for me, I've only put one or two photos of like my grandparents, my great grandparents, but I have dozens or hundreds more, that if somebody reached out to me, oh yeah, I'm happy to send you copies of them. So that might be the case with other people that they only took the time to put one or two photos on there, but they have hundreds more that they can share with you. So it's always worth it to reach out to them and ask for more. So here again, I'll show you how to find those trees and how to find those photos. So for the library edition again of Ancestry, you do have to use it within the library. Unfortunately, you can't use it from home. But any computer in the library, or you can bring your own computer. If you start at apl.org, go over that research and learn again. This time we're going to click on the genealogy and local history because then it's going to just narrow it down to those websites. And then Ancestry Library Edition's that first one. So from here, it's really easy if you just scroll all the way down to the bottom. There's a spot that says public member trees. And then you can type in an ancestor's name. And if you want to, you can type in, hey, I know he's born in Germany, for example. I know he died in Wisconsin. If I've got some years in there, I can pop those in there and then just click search when I've got some information in there. So now I can see a couple results. So it kind of gives you a little snapshot. Is this the right person you're looking for, or could it be the next guy? And you see, well, there's just one tree here, but actually it kind of tricks you. So he's actually found in 31 different trees. So if you click on where it says 31 trees or click view all, it's going to bring up an extra little window that it shows you all those 31 trees. So you'd have to click on each one and then see, okay, is there a photo attached? Well, this one there's not. I can click on the gallery just to be sure that there's no photo attached. This is usually where you're going to find those photos of people. So I can see that one doesn't have one. So let me go back to those results again. And then I just kind of keep going through them, going through them. And then I know this one for sure has one. So right here, I've got a photo. And if I want to get a copy of that photo, if I click on gallery, it's going to show me anything they have uploaded for this person. So I can click on it, and then here's a bigger version. And again, like I mentioned earlier, you can see it's kind of a cropped version of it. So I would reach out to her and say, hey, do you have this family photo? And maybe say how I'm related, and see if they can send you that full photo so that you can get the full photo in a better quality version. Again, in the library edition, you can't reach out to those people. It's just a feature that, there's no way for them to respond back to you on the library edition. Yeah.
So anybody can go into these trees and actually take a copy of this?
Absolutely.
Move it to someone?
It says save to tree right here. I don't know why they have that save to tree button. Because you can't really save it to your tree because you're not logged in. They used to make it way easier to save
Well, it
these.
said that on the side too, save to my.
So you can like print or save to tree. Top left over here. That brings us back to the gallery or to the Zoom. So because Ancestry likes to make it difficult, what you can do is I have a tool called Snipping Tool. I always use it, so I keep it on my toolbar down here. But if you have a Windows PC, you can just search for it down here. You do new, and then you can do like a little box around it, and then it saves that photo for you. So I can save it like that. Or again, this is probably a good example of, okay, I want to reach out to this person. And I think in the paid edition, it does make it a little bit easier for you to actually download the images.
What's the cost? per year?
It's a per year for Ancestry. They just recently had a 50% off sale. I think it's over, or today might be the last day of the 50% off. I can check quick.
So that snippet tool, is that Google thing you were talking about?
So snipping tool is just something that's available on a Windows PC.
Oh, okay.
Let's see.
Downloaded stuff from Ancestry when I had membership and then let my membership go, the pictures disappeared.
Oh, really? So my pictures are still there, and I didn't have a membership for a while.
It disappeared.
But it looks like you can do six months or 12 months, and it is, it's costly. So I always wait for the 50% off sale if I'm gonna subscribe. Or usually I always ask my family, hey, Christmas is coming up or my birthday's coming up. You want me to still work on the family tree? Everybody pitch in and get me a gift. And you can gift a membership. Also around the Thanksgiving time period, they always have some sort of money off gift memberships, but you can actually gift yourself a membership. So some people don't realize that. You can just purchase it with your own money because it requires it to be a gift certificate or a gift membership. And you can even set that to start like up to 3 months in advance. So if you don't want to, start it on Thanksgiving Day, you can set it to start, January 15th, if that's, a time period that's better for you.
And Katie, when you find a picture on Ancestry, I've never seen it where there's like a caption, unless it's a link to find a grave and then,
So sometimes there is captions. So like she put in this information that it was taken in Logan, that it was a portrait or family photo. Some people will put the year in there if they know it. Some people just upload stuff and don't put any of that extra data in, unfortunately. Other people are a little bit more detailed and do put that data in it. Or say this was a photo of multiple people, they might identify each of those people or tag each of the people in that photo. So you can hover over and see, oh, this is his wife, that's the brother, and see who it is. But not everybody does that, unfortunately. It's kind of you're at the mercy of whoever has put it up there to see how detailed they are or not.
Is it correct that if you have to have a membership to Ancestry to be able to put your photos up there?
I think you still could have a free version of Ancestry and upload your photos to your family tree.
Then other family members could log on to that, look at it.
As long as your tree is public, yes. They would have to use a library edition to view your tree, though. Because if you have a unpaid subscription, you can't search the family trees unless you're on the library edition. Great questions. All right. Next, we've got Family Search. Again, this one's the free one. So if you're somebody who doesn't want to pay for that Ancestry membership or doesn't want to come into the library to use that, get a free Family Search account. I'm already signed into my account, but you do need to be signed in order to see all the family tree and search in the family tree. This is a huge world family tree, so anybody can have a page in here. Anybody can add, edit, or delete things in here. So once you're signed in, you want to click on Family Tree and go to Find. This is where you would search for that name of that ancestor that you're looking for. And again, you can put in some information like their birthplace, birth year, or if you click on more options, you can add other details like their spouse or father or mother or other people, death date, anything like that. Or you can just start with a name and see what you get. Again, it gives you kind of a little snapshot overview so you can see, okay, is this the right person based on my research and what I know, or is it the next person? Once you find that person, you just click on their name. It again brings up a little snapshot. If you click on their name or click on person, it will bring you into their page. And I can see, once this loads, there's a little picture of her here. To get the full version of the picture, I want to click on Memories. So this is where people will have uploaded a memory, and you just click on it. And again, people can choose to put in details over here or not. So this person just said, hey, this photo is really rough shape. I had to photograph it outdoors. I cropped her and I lightly edited it. It had a photographer's name on it, and so she wrote those details. But if I wanted to get that full version of the photo, because I know she's next to somebody, I would click on this person's name. And right here, there's a button to chat. And so I would send this person a message and say, hey, this is my, second great grandmother. I would love a copy of this photo that you have, the full version, or something like that. And then you can send it, and then they would hopefully message you back. So this is another easy way to find photos. You can also tag people with their faces. So some people do that, some people don't. It is a little easier to save a version of this. So right here, we've got this little arrow with a line underneath it. That's the download button. So thankfully, Family Search makes it really easy. But again, it's going to be kind of a lower quality version of this photo, and it's just the cropped version that she has. So I can see she's got her hand on somebody, and I know it's her husband because I actually have a copy of the original photo. So again, that's just a really easy way that you can hopefully find photos of your ancestor on some of those sites. The last one is MyHeritage. This is another one where you do need a paid subscription. You do, even if you don't have a paid subscription, like I don't have a paid subscription to this site, you do have to be logged in. So you can have a free account. So what I do is I go under research, and there's a spot that says family trees. And again, you search with that ancestor's name, and you can pop in some details if you'd like. And then scroll down to search. And so you can see here's some results of family trees. Of course, they're going to blur it because I don't have a paid subscription to it. But if you scroll down, you see one happens to have a photo of him. And when I go to click on it, it says, hey, if you want to access that photo, you got to pay us some money. So hopefully that photo is available on one of the other sites. That maybe I can find it on Ancestry or on Family Search some other way. Or maybe I'm going to pay that, money to get access to that photo. Some other options, find graves. We talked about all about cemetery records. I think it was last year. So there's a whole cemetery records presentation where I talk more about find a grave. So if they have a find a grave page, some people put photos of their ancestors on there. Newspapers also could be the place where you find a relative's photo. So maybe their obituary has a photo with them. It's kind of more likely for the more recent people, or, probably maybe I would say in the 50s onward. Sometimes you get a photo from like the 50s to the 70s. It's more so recent, like in the last 30, 40 years that more people have photos because of course it costs more money to put their photo in there. But maybe there's a family photo somewhere from a reunion or multiple generation photo, or maybe they had a special anniversary. So I know I found photos like when they're celebrating their golden wedding anniversary, you get a photo of the couple. Just a tip, sometimes the digitized newspapers that you find online are going to be better than the microfilm that we have here at the library. Especially for photos, sometimes the quality is just a little bit better, or you can manipulate the lighting a little bit and the contrast a little bit to make those photos pop out a little bit more. But the best thing is if you can still find somebody who has the newsprint. So maybe one of your family members kept that original clipping of that newspaper and still has that, and the photo is going to be so much better in that original newsprint that you can get a better scan of that than you can from the newspapers that are digitized or on the microfilm. Don't forget about Google. So you can search the name of your ancestor on Google or any other search engine. On Google specifically, they do have like an image section, and I'll show you that in just a second, where you might be able to find photos that are not on some of these genealogy sites, or maybe they're on additional sites. So there's other sites like local genealogy societies or historical societies or your local library or a museum. There's Internet Archive, there's the Digital Public Library of America, there's Library of Congress. So we talked a lot about these other repositories in our January session earlier this year. If you want to go back and look at some of those for some demonstrations and a little bit more information, again, that's in our website where you can get a link to that video and that handout. Not all of these places have all of their photos online. So like us at the library, we do have a really good photo collection, but it's not everything we have access to. So be sure to reach out to those places. And I always tell people to remember the acronym SLAM. So SLAM stands for Societies, Libraries, Archives, Museums. You want to slam in that area your ancestors lived in. So if your ancestors live in Appleton, I'm going to look for those societies, those libraries, those archives, those museums in Appleton where they lived and see if they have inherited any photos of that person that lived there. There's also published books that you might get lucky. They might be physically in libraries yet in book form, or some libraries have digitized their materials and published some of them online, especially some of these historic ones. So there's lots of county histories all around the United States. Sometimes they have little biographies like this about the residents, and sometimes they have photos. So this was somebody kind of really prominent in the Appleton area. So they've got his photo and a little write-up about him. And we have digitized this and put this online for people to be able to locate. And you can get, a pretty good quality photo of that person then. So I'll show you a quick little demonstration of Google here. So we're going to search for my ancestor. So of course, right away when you search here, you're going to get all the different website results. So look at, you might find something like Descendants of George. So here I've got like somebody created a little genealogy website, and I can scroll around and then I can see, oh, look at, there's some photos here of certain people. So I can keep scrolling down. Here's that same photo that we saw on Ancestry. Again, it's a cropped version, but again, you might be able to find photos of people on websites that you didn't think about or didn't know exist. And then the other thing I wanted to show you was this images area. So this is another area you can click on. Sometimes you get lucky and sometimes they're historic images. Sometimes they're kind of unrelated people who might have the same name or more current photos. But you can always, click on some of these and go to those websites. If I click on visit, it's going to bring me right into that website. So I might have a little bit more information. So this is Joe and his son George in the photo. Well, I see 3 guys in the photo, so that doesn't help me. Who's who? We need a little bit more description on that one, but it at least is a photo that potentially could be your ancestor. Another word of caution, though, just because you find a photo online attached to somebody doesn't mean that it's 100% accurate. It doesn't mean for sure that that's a photo of that person. You are going based on whoever identified that photo and posted it online. So I wanted to show you an example. This is the Find a Grave page of my 4th great grandmother, Amelia Kebschel. So this photo, wonderful photo, it is of her. Another great, wonderful photo, a photo of her gravesite. And then I come to this photo that says it's her as a young woman. Well, I happen to know it's not her as a young woman. It's actually one of her cousins. And I have reached out to this person and told them multiple times, it's not her, it's a cousin. Yeah, I have an identified photo of this that I knew who the person who identified it was, and they are correct. And this person, unfortunately, still has not taken it down. So you might get somebody mistakenly identifying somebody and posting it on there. And even though you reach out to them several times, they might not take it down. That is the gamble we play, unfortunately.
Are you allowed to make a comment? Like underneath that?
On Find a Grave, no, it will not allow you to make a comment. You can only add additional photos. You can download a copy of the photo. So if I clicked on this, I can click View Original, and then I can do like a right click and save image and save a copy of it. But there's no other way I can, do anything else. Unfortunately, I can't comment on here at all. I can't even edit it. Like, see, she didn't capitalize that maiden name. She's using a nickname for her instead. There's all these things that you would like to change. You can suggest edits. You do have to have a free Find a Grave page, and you can suggest edits, and then you can write a little thing on them sometimes and correct those errors on there. But it's up to that person who is kind of in charge of that memorial to make those changes or not. Any questions so far before we move on to identifying and dating photos?
On that Find a Grave site, the folks that went out and photographed all of those headstones, are they the one that's responsible for any other information? The actual person that photographed it?
It depends on if they created the memorial or if they didn't. So somebody else could have created the memorial and they didn't have a photo on there, and you can add a photo even if you don't own that memorial. So like I could go on that Find a Grave page and I can
Don't you have to have a copy of a photograph of the headstone to create?
no,
Oh,
nope. I can add a photo right here if I want to. And I don't own this memorial, somebody else does. So you
oh,
can
yeah,
see
your
who
own memorial,
who
but
owns a
to put up
memorial.
that memorial initially, do you have to
I actually
post
do.
the photograph of the headstone?
No. No, there's plenty of people who don't have headstones. Let's see if I can find one quick.
I never noticed that.
Yeah, there's plenty of people who don't have headstone photos.
Oh.
Billion Graves, you do have to have a headstone. That's might be why you're thinking that. But Billion Graves is another similar site to Find a Grave where you do have to have the headstone photo. And even I do own this grave. I didn't realize I managed her memorial, but I can't even delete these photos that are in here, which is a bummer. Somebody else uploaded the photo and I can't delete it from a memorial that I own and manage. So that's the bummer about Find a Grave. One of the rare bummers about it. I can even, so you see where it says request photo. If they don't have a photo of her headstone, I can click on that. And there's volunteers all around the world. Sometimes people get back to you fairly quick. Sometimes you're waiting years and years later and there's still no.
So somebody sees
Photo.
that and then goes out to the cemetery and
Yeah.
takes a photo.
Yep. So like if you live in the Appleton area, you can be a volunteer to go to Riverside and take a photo for somebody who, lives in New York and can't just easily go to Riverside Cemetery. Yeah.
Did that years ago for that old random acts of genealogical
Oh, yeah.
kindness
Mhm.
when that started.
Let's see. Someone says, I have experienced that some ancestry trees do not have accurate information, including their photos attached to people. Yep. Unfortunately, that's the gamble we play with photos. Someone says, on a Windows computer, use the Windows key Shift and S to access snipping tool. So yeah, you can do that as well. Like I said, I use it so often, I just pin it down to my thing down there. And someone, yeah, make sure you make a note of where you got a copy of that photo, what website, what family tree to give credit to that original person who has that. There's lots of people, unfortunately, who save and save and save photos, and you ask them years later, where did you get that photo from? I don't know. So make sure you're citing that source. Yes, we are recording the webinar. It will be available on our YouTube channel tomorrow. All right, see if there's questions here. Handout, yes. I gotta grab the link. Or share the link with you in just a second. What if you reposted the photo with correct information on it? On Find a Grave, well, the problem is on Find a Grave, it's attached to her, and there's no way to delete it from her. I guess I could attach another photo of that same photo and say this is not her, but that is a good point. All right, let's see. Grab the handout link here. What are your thoughts on copyright? Don't break copyright. That could be a whole nother session on copyright. So who knows where these people are getting these photos from, if they even have permission to put these photos online. I mean, technically, if you took the photo, you own the copyright, even if you don't register it. But all these family photos that you maybe inherited, you clearly didn't take that photo. You clearly can't ask your third great grandmother, hey, can I put a photo of you online? Or, that person who took that photo, if they're gone, you can't ask them, can I put the photo online? So that's up to you if you want to, think about copyright or not. I mean, there could be a whole session on copyright, like I said. So, there we go. In the sake of time, we're just move on. But yes, copyright is something you have to consider, which is why I always recommend, of course, citing your sources. All right, identifying and dating photos. So, First, to kind of identify and date them, you want to explore what type and what style the photo is, because knowing that information helps narrow down the time period and can maybe help you identify who might be in the photo. So starting kind of from the earliest photos, those are what we call cased images. And there are kind of three main ones. I'm gonna butcher the pronunciation of this one, and I even practice it. Daguerreotype. I think that's close. There's the ambrotype, and then there's the tintype. So going through each of these, the daguerreotype dates back to 1839 when Louis Daguerre popularized a new invention that was more affordable and accessible to people than having a painted portrait. Because of course, before then, people had to sit and get their whole painting done in order to have an image of themselves. These daguerreotypes took about 5 minutes to create. When they were first released, of course, they were able to shorten the time a little bit later, but these are one-of-a-kind images. They could only do one of them at a time, and it took 5 minutes. So people had to stay in that same position for that whole 5 minutes, or if they moved a little bit, it's going to blur the image. They would even sometimes have people like in braces to hold that person still for sure, especially with the young kids. So a lot of people, if they're looking at these historic photos, they think, oh, my ancestor's not smiling. They look so angry. And this might be why, because they had to stay so still. You don't want to hold that smile for 5 minutes, right? So that might be a reason why. So here's an example of one that I found on the Library of Congress because I don't have any in my own personal collection. But you can see these are made directly on a metal plate. They also usually have some sort of mat on it that frames that image. And they have a glass covering and some sort of edging usually. And they're usually in some sort of little case unless that case has been broken. Some people have, tried to do things with them that might be breaking them or damaging them a little bit. But kind of the easy way to spot them, if they're shiny, if they have kind of a mirror-like reflective surface, you sometimes have to hold them at a particular angle to actually see the image. Like if you just hold it and it's like, okay, this doesn't look like anything, you might have to tilt it a little bit to see the image, depending on how it was produced. And sometimes it changes it from like a negative to a positive. So like we could see this one, but if we hold it a certain way, it might be like the exact opposite coloring. Again, it's usually in a case. Sometimes they are colored or tinted in a certain way. But of course, they can also be confused with these other two types, the ambrotypes and tintypes, because they look very similar. So this is an example of an ambrotype. So you see it looks very similar. These were more popular in the mid 1850s, so a little bit after those daguerreotypes. Instead of the metal surface, they were made with a piece of glass that was coated with some sort of light sensitive, again, I'm going to butcher this name, collodion, I think it is. So this image again is reflected, but you can at least view this one from all the different angles. They also usually have some sort of black velvet or paper that are on the back to make this negative image a positive. So that image that you're actually seeing is actually flipped. So you see this is like a Civil War soldier. So the gun is on this side, but in real life, the gun was actually on the other side. This is a flipped image. Then tintypes, again, look very similar, popular in the 1860s to 1880s. A little less fancy than those other two types, but they made these on polished iron plates. They usually, again, had some sort of paper mat or some sort of case, and then they had a coating of clear varnish that protected the image a little bit better than those other two earlier types. They were a lot faster and cheaper to produce as well. You usually see them kind of with like a brown or chocolate kind of color tint to it. But I've also seen some that are like a blue or yellowish tinted color as well. Unfortunately, nowadays there are some places that do like souvenir tintype style photos. So those might confuse people a little bit, but you can usually hopefully spot a more historic one. Unfortunately, a lot of those don't have any identification because you can see based on what they're made out of, they're not easy to write on. You really can't write on them. And because they were portable, people would carry them, like soldiers would carry them on the battlefield. Many were damaged or lost or misplaced, among other things. But if you're lucky, maybe you still have one that you've inherited in your family. But it wasn't until like the end of the 1860s when we started seeing more card photographs that kind of became the norm, and those cased images just kind of started disappearing. So they were kind of invented a little at the same time, but they weren't popular until they really introduced the process of making multiple copies. So like we talked about the daguerreotype, it was that one-of-a-kind image. It took 5 minutes. Well, of course, people wanted to share their photo a little bit more in the family, so they wanted multiple copies of the same photo and didn't want to have to sit for 5 minutes every time. So that's when these photos came a little bit more popular at the end of the 1860s. They were a little bit more inexpensive to produce. They were better quality, more durable, and again, you could do multiple quantities. There's lots of different types of card photos. With Carta Viste is their visiting card. That's kind of the most popular one that a lot of people notice. Those came about in 1859. Those are usually on a cardstock, and a photographer usually had their name or some sort of imprint on that cardstock. There's a really great book by Maureen Taylor called The Family Photo Detective that has a lot of super great details, more than what I can cover in this whole session, about all the different types and styles of photos. So I definitely encourage you to check that out. So here's just a quick little snapshot of all the different types of just the card photographs. So you can see there's cabinet cards, there's panel cards, there's stereographs. And they're all different sizes, all different years that they came into when they were produced. So based on what it is, could help you narrow down that time period. And again, she goes in a lot more detail on each of these in her book. Here's just an example of some of the different various types and sizes that you can see kind of all throughout the 19th century. There's, circle ones, there's square ones, there's rectangular ones, there's different colors, different matting, all kinds of different variety. Another one that's kind of popular in that mid-1890s period are square or diamond-shaped photos. So they're a little bit more easily recognizable just on their shape. You also have the long rectangular style that are more popular around 1910 to 1925. A lot of people have inherited photo postcards. So those are more towards the beginning of the 1900s, so 1905, 1920. If they were mailed, they usually have some sort of postmark or date stamp on them, so it helps you date it a little bit easier. They also usually, of course, have the person that got that photo, but the person sending it didn't always sign it because presumably if they were sending it to grandma, grandma knew who it was. So sometimes you don't always get that person signing their photo, unfortunately. Or it could be the mom of the daughter in that photo who's sending the postcard. So you still got to do a little bit of detective work to try to identify who is in that sometimes. So here's an example from one of my families. So this one on the back just says Gleen or Glenn, just misspelled, and Gladys. So I've got two kids here. This is from one of my ancestors' photo collections that somebody in the family inherited and shared with me. I have no clue who Gladys is. I cannot find a Gladys in the family tree at all in this side of the family. I do have a Glenn, and based on the time period and when he was born, it kind of seems to match, but I don't know for sure. Obviously, knowing the part of the family, he's a great grandson of Elizabeth who had this photo, so that seems likely. Well, maybe Gladys was another great granddaughter who maybe she died young and I just haven't been able to find any trace of her at this point. But without kind of more information, I really just have nothing other than possibly Glenn, possibly Gladys, based on who wrote that and who even knows who wrote those identifications. So kind of still sitting on the unidentified pile. You guys are probably familiar with Polaroids. So those started becoming developed in 1947, and they were able to be produced in a minute. So these became really, really popular and an easy way to take a lot of photos. So you'll see Polaroids are black and white from 47 to 62. And then from 1963 and on, they were available in color. They are kind of coming back more in popularity again. I see a lot of younger kids with the new Polaroid cameras and they think it's so cool. So for those of us who have used an old Polaroid camera, I'm like, all right, you're so impressed with that? Like, all right. But these, again, are one-of-a-kind images. You can't, make multiple copies of a Polaroid. I mean, I guess you could scan it in and make multiple copies that way, but, each time you click on that camera, it's producing a new one-of-a-kind image. There's also slides. So there's two different types of slides. There's glass slides and film slides. Again, one of a kind images. When they, took that, it was that only shot is what you got. So glass slides were introduced in 1849 and were popular until 1950. So that's a very broad time period. So it doesn't always help you narrow down when it was taken. And those film slides started being produced in 1936 and going forward. They were relatively inexpensive, so people usually took a lot of photos on these slides and didn't always get rid of the bad ones. So if you can borrow a slide projector or a slide viewer, or some people have kind of made like makeshift ones where you can kind of put it on a lighted box and look at the photo a little bit before you decide, hey, I'm going to discard it, or, oh, I want to scan this in and make a copy of it. They do make slide converters for slides that you can digitize them. So this is an example of one from my grandparents' collection that is my dad and his two brothers in the mid to late 1960s. Thankfully, I still have my grandma around to identify who's who, even if I couldn't tell. But it's kind of fun to sit and digitize them, but you can see even digitizing them, there's still like a little color off. So you can see like this is the sky, it looks a little off. And you can see kind of like a bluish tint kind of on the house and the background. So you can use, of course, some sort of photo correcting software. I always recommend, of course, keeping the original as it is and then making copies and playing with the copy and editing those if you have a little photo editing skills. I really don't, so I've kind of left it as is. Digital photos, of course, we are so familiar with being able to just pull out our phones and take a digital photo. So since about the mid 1990s, even though we didn't have smartphones then, people had digital cameras. So unfortunately, with those and with the smartphones, a lot of people aren't actually printing photos. They have tons of photos. I'm sure you have thousands of photos, but you're not really printing those physical photos anymore. So this one taken at my favorite place on earth, Lambeau Field, I don't have a physical copy of this photo. It just lives on my phone. So if I ever want to print it, I've got to, figure out, okay, Walmart prints photos. Let me upload it to the Walmart site and then I have to print it and I get it mailed to my house or I have to go pick it up. It's a little bit more of a process. And of course, hey, I can just pull up that photo on my phone anytime I want to look at it. Well, if I want to pass it down to my ancestor or my descendants later, I want to have it printed out. A couple little tips on handling photos. You always want to be sure to have clean hands. So before you're going to start digitizing photos or looking at photos, make sure you wash your hands. Don't put any lotion on because it's going to leave that residue on those photos. If you're handling a really old film or old fragile photos, I recommend getting some cotton gloves. Just buying some cotton gloves, making sure that they're washed. They're actually fairly inexpensive. Just buy like archival kind of white cotton gloves on Amazon. It's better than having ruined photos. You don't want to touch that surface of the image at all. You want to hold the image at the edges to make sure you're not leaving any fingerprints or anything or damaging it in any way. You want to avoid any light or heat near the photos or the film. If you're going to store your photos, of course, long term, you want to make sure that it's a moderate temperature, not anything too hot or too cold, like an attic or a basement that might have a little bit more temperature extreme. You also want to make sure you're using proper archival safe storage materials. So there's something called the PAT test, the photographic activity test. It's kind of a simulated aging test that these people at the Image Permanence Institute use to predict which storage materials are going to be best long term. So they put, certain materials at test and they kind of accelerate how it deteriorates over time or how it stains photos. And so there are certain things that pass that PAT test. Those are the things that you want to buy to make sure that they're not going to damage your photos if they've been there for 10 years or 20 years or 30 years. If you've got any dust or dirt on photos, you can use like just a little can of compressed air to kind of remove that. I wouldn't like take a cloth or anything or like a paper towel that's gonna, possibly scratch your image. So use something a little more gentle like compressed air. You, of course, don't want to write directly on that image. There are some things that you can use like a soft lead pencil If you want to write on the reverse side and make sure that it's not like bleeding through. Or what I usually do is I write on an archival quality paper. So there's like photo envelopes that are archival quality that you can write on there before you put your photo in and then put your photo in. And we'll talk a lot more about preservation and some of these products that I recommend for you in our second session on July 28th in 2 weeks, when we talk all about scanning, organizing, and preserving photos. A little bit more on identifying. Unfortunately, not every photo you're going to find is going to be properly labeled with who it is. And again, sometimes you might never be able to find out who is really in the photo or how accurate that label might be. Your best bet is checking with oldest living relatives if any of them happen to have been alive and maybe met the person that could have possibly been in that photo, or could they identify any of your photos or any of the people that are in photos. Again, though, be aware, memories aren't always great. Identification might not be 100%. You know, sometimes siblings and cousins look very similar and it's hard to tell. Like sometimes I look at photos of my dad and his brothers and it's like, oh, I can't really tell if that's Uncle John or if that's Uncle Scott. You know, I gotta kind of look at it a little closer, especially like if they're baby photos too. Those are really tough to kind of identify who's who. Or even my cousin looked a lot like my grandpa in photos. So you got to kind of make sure you're dating the photo right if that's grandpa or if that's my cousin. So be careful with identifying. When you do have somebody identify who is in the photos, it's always a great idea to put who identified that. So this photo identification was made by Katie Stilp on such and such date so that people know that's where that information came from. It's from my brain. So then that person in the near future or the far future can determine if I was correct or not. Again, you might not know who wrote on the back of the photo when that identification happened. Did it happen right after the photo was taken, or was it 50 years later that your grandma wrote who it was based on what she remembered or who she knew in the photo? That's why it's so important to label your photos and date them as soon as possible. Do it as soon as possible. Even if you know the photo and who the people are, those future generations don't know who it is. So that's who the label is for, the future generations, to make sure. And again, we'll talk a lot more about labeling, the materials you can use, what you want to put on your label in our next session in 2 weeks. Another way that you can try to identify photos, if you have other known photos of a person, you can try to compare those unidentified photos to that identified photo and see if it could possibly be a match. Sometimes you could still, get it wrong. But some of the things you can pay attention to are the facial features. So the shape of your face, your eyes, your nose, your ears, a hair pattern, your eyebrows, if there's any distinctive marks like moles, the teeth, if they're smiling. Of course, a person's face changes a little over time as we age, or people can inherit certain characteristics that are kind of across the board in each family. So again, is that my grandpa or is it my cousin? Because they look so similar at a certain age, that it's really hard to tell them apart. So, do your best. And still, if you're not 100% sure, you can write on there, not 100% sure, but I think this is so-and-so based on these details. Another great thing is looking at context clues. So look in the background, see any of those details. No detail is too small. So can you make out where the photo might have been taken? That could help you narrow down who it might be. Is there some sort of business name that you can see in the background? Or you can see a vehicle and know maybe approximately what type of vehicle that is and what year it might be, or what's in the scenery or a street sign. Any of those little details might help narrow down that location or time period. At a certain time, there were photographer names on the bottom of photos. So Google that name of the photographer in that location. See if you can find out when they were in business. Some even list an actual address. So I've seen some like 862 College Ave. Well, now I can look in the city directory and see, oh, maybe they were only at that location for 6 years. Now I've got a really narrow time period. In Wisconsin, we have a really great resource. So if it's a Wisconsin photographer, there's the Wisconsin Photographers Index. So this is in your handout. So this covers photographers in the state of Wisconsin from 1840 to 1976. It's just a downloadable index that they have on their website. It's 276 pages, so I don't recommend printing it out. An easy way to find a photographer's name, of course, this is alphabetical, but if it's like, oh, this is a photographer in the seas, I don't want to keep scrolling through all the pages. If you have a Windows computer, there's Control F, and it brings up this little box over here. And I can type whatever I want in this box. So I can type in the name of a photographer, click enter, and then it brings me right to that page. Now I can see, okay, there's one in Suring from this time period to this time period. There's one in Howe, which is really near to Suring from these years. There's one in Hayes from just this year to this year. And sometimes it gives a little bit more detail on the side as well. You could also put in a location. Like if I'm looking for all the Appleton area ones, I can put in Appleton and now I can see, okay, CF Atkins, and then I go to the next one, Avenue Photographers, and the next one. So you can do that as well and see what photographers are there in that area where your ancestors lived. So a very helpful resource, thankfully, from the Wisconsin Historical Society. Other states might have something similar. There's also a resource called Dead Fred, which I will show you in just a few minutes, that does have some photographer index. It was being a little wonky when I tested it out earlier today, so we'll see if it's playing nice by now or not. A lot of people try to use clothing when identifying and dating photos. It's a little tough sometimes. Maybe your grandpa only had one suit and he wore it every time that somebody got married. So you can't always say, oh, that's such and such wedding because he wore the same suit every time. Or maybe two sisters shared the same belt, so you can't always identify which sister it is, or the same hat. Of course, sometimes clothing is passed down from brother to sister, or sister to brother, from sister to sister. If you are going to try to date based on photos, female clothing is usually a little easier because they tended to follow the fashion trends a little bit more than the men did. And again, that Family Photo Detective book by Maureen Taylor is a really great resource, walking you through a lot more specific types of clothing and how to date them. So just showing you a quick little snapshot of a page of that book. She's going through from, this time period to this time period. This is what you're looking for: the necklines, the sleeves, the accessories, the hair. So she's giving very distinctive detail and showing you examples of what to look for and how to date those based on fashion. So again, highly recommend this book. Other things, if there's other culture or fashion cues, backgrounds and props in the photo, what are they sitting on? Or there's a chest next to them. There's certain things that maybe there's a certain chair that's only used for a certain time period. Like there's whole books dedicated to certain antique furniture that was used in photography studios that you can sometimes narrow it down. Or again, fashion trends like heavy mustaches that were the fashion in the late 1880s to 1890s, but then by the 20th century, men are usually clean shaven. So again, that might help you narrow down that time period. Of course, they might not have always followed those fashion or cultural cues, though. We also had a really great video a few years ago on identifying, interpreting historic photos, where she gives a lot more specific details on all the different themes and trends in photography that you could also use to help date some of those. Again, a lot more than what we can go in detail today because it's already been an hour. Another great tip is if you can figure out where the photo came from, who owned it. So if you know, oh, I got this photo from my great aunt Pat, she inherited it from her mother, my great grandma. Now I know it's at least that specific part of the family that it likely is from. Again, don't forget to look at the back. Some people always are like, oh yeah, I forgot to do that. There might be additional details on the back. Again, perhaps it was a photo postcard and maybe there's some information on there like the postmark that helps, or depending on what their message was, if they wrote a message on there that might help give you some clues to help identify or date that photo. For dating, it's very similar. There's kind of 4 key ways to date a photo. Again, type of photo, which we talked about a little earlier. Looking at that style to narrow down that time period. Of course, if it's a cased image, it's a certain time period versus a Polaroid, which is a certain time period. that photographer. So determining when that photographer was in business. So you can use city directories, you can use newspaper ads, any other location specific stuff. If you know you're looking for a photographer in Appleton, we have resources that you can use that are Appleton specific that could help you identify when that person was in business. Again, those internal details, those props, those backdrops, any signage, any facial characteristics. Again, no detail is too small. If you are really hardcore about dating stuff and identifying stuff, looking at all the little details, even using a magnifying glass sometimes to pull out some of those details. And again, that clothing style. So especially those women clothing, that can be really helpful in placing it in a certain time period. Also looking at other photos. So maybe there's several photos from one specific event, like a family wedding, that can help date multiple photos or at least see, okay, all of these photos are taken at the same event, and then looking at all those details in those 3 or 4 photos that are from that same event and seeing what details you can pick out of it. So I've got a little challenge for you guys. I'm going to test your knowledge now. So what details can you spot in this photo that might help us identify anybody? Or what questions might you try to answer about this photo to help you identify and date it? And this down here is the photographer's name and city, because it's really hard to see down here in the scan. So feel free to shout out any suggestions or what you think. What might we look at in this photo to try to date it or identify?
The sleeves on the women.
Yeah, some of the fashion on the women, absolutely. Maybe like these props over here were only in existence in a certain time.
Even the
I've
style-
got 2 names on here at least. That gives me part of the clue, right?
Even the stuff.
Yeah, the style of the ties for sure. A lot of good suggestions. So this is what I have, just a little bit. So Nathan and Elizabeth are labeled, so we at least can guess that the others in the photo are likely somehow related to them. This photo, I got it from a box of other Thompson family photos, some that were labeled, some were not. So we know this is Nathan and Elizabeth Thompson. So I can ask myself, well, are there children in the photo of Nathan and Elizabeth? Let me look at the ages of the people and try to guess a little bit. Well, when did Nathan and Elizabeth die? Okay, one died in 1915, one died in 1919. So I know this photo is taken at least before then. Based on their ages, maybe 10 years before they died, who knows? Again, we can look at the style of the clothes, see what time period it might suggest. Looking at this belt here on the woman who's crouched, I know that's the same belt my ancestor is wearing in another photo that I have her identified. So it's a pretty good guess that it's her, and looking at her facial features, I am pretty confident that is her. But who are the other 2 people in the background? Are those her siblings? Are they children of hers? So looking at when they're born and the approximate ages and seeing if I can compare it to any other photos I might have. I know it's not her brother and sister based on the age. It doesn't line up with this time period. I know it's not her husband. I don't know who this little kid is either. So some of these, it still is a little bit of a mystery. I'm still trying to solve all of it. I've at least got 3 of the 6, but another thing, it had that photographer's name down here, so I can figure out, okay, when was he in business in Suring? That helps narrow down the time period as well. So again, little short exercise just briefly on some of the things. I can go into even further detail about all the things we could look at to help narrow down even more. But what if you still can't identify it or date it? Well, again, show it to as many people, as many relatives as possible. Maybe someone else in the family might recognize it or have a similar photo that they have identified. Don't throw them away. I hate when people say, oh yeah, I had all these unidentified photos. I just threw them away. Oh my gosh. Please don't do that. You never know when you're going to come across that right clue that's going to help open up that box and identify more of those people. Maybe you finally solve that mystery and now you just, got rid of all of them. Or maybe there's another cousin who's like, oh, I really want to inherit these photos and I'm going to do some more work and try to identify them. So please don't ever get rid of them. There are genealogy sites that have unidentified photos that you can post them. Maybe somebody else can identify them. Or even if you have identified photos, but you're not sure how they fit into your family, maybe they were friends or business associates or somebody that your ancestor just interacted with that they happen to have photos of. You can post them there and reunite them with potential family members. So there's two I'll show you in just a second, Dead Fred and Ancient Faces, again for unidentified or identified photos. And don't forget to search those sites for potential identified photos of your ancestor. You just never know what you're going to find. There's also Facebook groups for unidentified photos and helping date photos. So that's another resource for you if you want to try to pull on some other people's knowledge and see what other details they can spot that you might have missed. So here is Dead Fred. It's just deadfred.com. So there's surname search. You can type in a surname. Again, I tried it earlier and it was being a little funky. So right now the surname search is not working. But you can click on a letter that was working before. And you can again see all the different surnames here. And then click on one that's like, all right, that one looks like my surname. And then you can see some of these photos here. So here's a whole Confederate veteran group from Dyer, Tennessee. Maybe your ancestor served in this and might be in one of these photos. Or maybe you happen to know who this baby is, or that's your ancestor because it's identified who it is. So some really cool things that you can find on here. There's also a photographer's area. So again, you can click on, one of these letters. Oh, it brought me right back to the front. So they might be having a little issue with their site. Let's see if we can just click on. Yeah, they're having a little issue with the site because it was working before. But this is another way that you can learn a little bit more about some of these photographers because not everybody, unfortunately, has that awesome resource that we do in Wisconsin with the Photographers Index.
Those two photos that you showed us, though, they had names attached.
Those did, yeah.
Okay.
I can't even remember what I clicked on, but yeah. There's some that do have them attached. This one just happens to be like a yearbook image, so we've got some images of people. You just never know what you're going to find in here. You can play all around and see. Sometimes it's just the name of the family and nobody's identified, but you can see there's numbers here, so somebody has to have it identified somewhere. It's kind of strange that there's no additional details on what those numbers mean, so sometimes you get lucky, sometimes not. Ancient Faces is another one that you can play around with. So you can search by name, by keyword. So for example, I could type in Wisconsin and see any Wisconsin related photos. So they could be just like, historic photos that are related somehow. They could be people that are identified and it was taken in Wisconsin, for example. So sometimes they're identified, sometimes they are not. I can search a surname if I wanted to. Sometimes you don't get results, sometimes you get results. These also sometimes link to other like genealogical type stuff where they try to write like a little kind of timeline about them based on things that they've pulled from other sites. So take that information with a grain of salt, but look for photos. So you can type in even a full name. I love Lucy, so you can get Lucy. So yeah, that's another fun way you can play around and try to find photos of people. And you can also add photos. I think you do have to have an account in order to add photos, though. Again, this one is a huge book. It's amazing if you want to learn a little bit more about photos. This is Maureen Taylor's Family Photo Detective. Learn how to find genealogy clues in old photos and solve family photo mysteries. So she has an updated version from 2023 that has that great overview of each photo style and tips on dating and identifying. But she's also got an older version from 2013 that has very similar information. Not much has changed, but she has updated it a little bit in her 2023 version. Again, this is also a video that we did a few years ago on identifying and interpreting historic photos, where she goes a little bit more in depth on those specific styles and how to, point out some of those details, some of the context clues, all those kind of great things. So I recommend watching that as well for a little more information. And then again, in 2 weeks, we'll talk a little bit more. We'll talk about scanning, organizing, and preserving family photos. Also, our next Find Your Ancestors is going to be Thursday, August 13th, 6 p.m. We're going to talk all about researching house history. So you can research your own house or an ancestor's house, or if they owned a business at a certain location. It could even help you find those photographers and be able to research those photographers a little bit more. That is going to be an in-person only one upstairs in our Mary Beth Neame House community meeting rooms at 6 p.m. on August 13th. Happy to answer any more questions for you if you guys have any more.
You did store at moderate temperature, but in what kind of container? Is like a cardboard banker's box okay? Should it be in like a plastic?
So we're going to talk all about the different types of containers and things like that that are archival safe in our session in 2 weeks. So I have some specific resources for you to look for. Because you don't want to just store it in a regular old cardboard box or something like that. It's going to deteriorate over time. Any questions from our online folks here? Let's see. Someone said, is Dead Fred still functioning since the creator recently died? Maybe that's why they're having some issues with their site. Yeah, so hopefully Dead Fred will still be able to function a little more, even though Dead Fred is dead. Can you look in the censuses for the business photographer's name when he was in that area and check local directories, personal and business? Yes, so those are also options. Yeah,
So next week you'll be covering, or 2 weeks.
2 weeks from today.
Yeah, you'll be covering.
Scanning,
Okay.
organizing, and preserving. So yes, how to store your photos, how to organize them. If you have those physical photos, how to properly scan them and save them.
What about printing photos?
Printing I don't cover, but I could give you some suggestions. Yeah. Any other questions? All right. Well, thanks everybody. Hopefully you're ready to go identify and date some photos, or at least try to poke around on some of the family trees and some of the websites and find some photos of your ancestors. Or maybe it prompts you reaching out to a cousin and saying, hey, do you have some family photos?
Now, what you just presented, we can watch it again?
Yes. So I recorded the session. I will have it on our YouTube channel by tomorrow. Yeah. So I can show you how to find our YouTube channel here. So if you go to youtube.com/APLREF, that's just the quick, easy way to get to our YouTube channel. We've got a whole playlist called Genealogy Jumpstart. So these are all of our sessions that we've had up to today. So all the way back to getting started, we've got newspapers, we've got family search if you want to learn more about that, census, immigration, city directories, all these kinds of great things. So this is our 23rd session. Wow.
Goodness.
Yeah.
And you don't have to be a library.
You do not have to be a library patron. This is completely free and available to you. And if you want another easy way to get to the handouts and things like that, if you just type in apl.org/genealogy jumpstart, it brings you to the 2025 version. But here's the handouts and the videos that you can also get those as well. There's also another way you can get there. If you go under that research and learn, go to genealogy and local history. It is one of the things listed here under Genealogy Jumpstart. So here's the 2026 stuff. Here's the ones from last year. So again, I always post our handout links on here. And then after the video is up, the video link will be up here. And then you can see the upcoming sessions as well. So August, we're doing international research, and September, we're doing two different sessions on organizing your research. The first one will be all about physical research materials. The second part will be all about digital materials. So if you have digital things that you want to organize properly.
There's nothing for the rest of the year?
There is stuff for the rest of the year. I'm just not 100% sure on my October dates yet because I have a presentation at a state conference that I'm waiting for them to tell me the date, and that should be next week that they tell me the date. So that will determine when I can do this or not. But I do have October's topic. I think is it DNA? I can't remember now. We're do DNA. We're going to do preserving your stories. Yeah, I think October is a two-part DNA. November is preserving your stories. And then December, it was just going to be come to me with your research questions, pick my brain. So that's the end. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for
Thank
being
you very
here.
much.
We're see you all in 2 weeks.
I did.